Hi everyone, this is very exciting. We're going to start module 2 of our training, and we're going to look into risk analysis, which is one of probably, that's not true. I like every part of risk management, but this one is one that I particularly cherish. I think there's the fact that there are formulas and numbers and things like that. I actually really enjoy it. So we'll be spending the next 3 sessions discussing risk analysis. Here we are. Let's go. Let's get ready. You might want to get your tools out so you can follow as we go through. So first off, session 1 today, we're going to look at, of course, the activity analysis as a whole. And there are different steps that you have to take on if you want to do a robust analysis of an activity. So today we're going to look at session 1. We're going to be spending some time looking at the first few steps. And then in session 2, we're going to finish how the activity analysis is continued. And then in session 3, we're going to look at the international safety context in relation with the coronavirus pandemic. And what we'll do is we'll use an example. So we'll look at a risk, a threat, and then if it's a risk, and analyze it together so that we bring the level of risk to an acceptable level for our organization. So again, rather quickly, you were put through significant stress because of the COVID-19. You had to adapt to the situation, regain control, limit the consequences. So now that the COVID-19 is part of our, it has to be considered in our operations from now on. It's important to look into developing new contingency plans and analyzing the risks that are specific to COVID-19. So again, we're focusing on the threat of the pandemic on your traveler's OHS. However, everything that we're talking about is transferable to your risk taxonomy. So we're focusing here on operational risks, but everything else, all the other categories should be treated as well. So the activity analysis is part of the prevention aspect of your safety plan, and it is a very important aspect, as you will see within the next couple minutes. An activity analysis is generally carried out prior to the development of your activity. So it's not something that you do as your activity unravels. It's rather something that you do prior that permits you to accept the activity or reconduct. So if you, even though you've had this project abroad for numerous years, well, on a yearly basis or whenever you're reconducting the project, you should be performing an activity analysis. And then if the development of your project, if your project unravels over time, the context, the safety context might evolve, and the need to perform an analysis might arise again. So keep that in mind. And yeah, so who should be performing the activity analysis? Well, first off, a qualified person. Risk analysis is not a very complex topic or concept. It takes time, and it takes resources, and it takes knowledge of the destination, or at least an understanding of field operations. And then what you need to do is to look at sources of information. So we've provided you with a list of sources. If you open up your tools, you'll see that. And there's the source's name, and there's the website and a brief description. And towards the end of that document, you also have sources that are related to the COVID. So those are great sources for you to start working with. Other than documents and reports, you want to collect information from stakeholders, so local partners, national partners, even like other organizations that work in the same parameter as you in the field. You want to consult local authorities, government. When you do your activity analysis, you want to consider your risk tolerance. So remember, we talked about in Module 1 the importance of having a governance document. That's very important because that's where you're positioning as an organization with regards to your risk appetite is. And that's the foundation of your decision-making process that we're going to go through over in this module. And an activity analysis should comprise of field visit. So best practice would be to go down in the field and to identify threats and risks. So 6 steps to perform a robust analysis. So first off, it's about understanding the activity's context, identifying risks, identifying risk levels. You want to define your risk management strategy and look into mitigation measures. One that is very important and often overlooked is the analysis of your partner capacity when it comes to satisfying your due diligence or contributing to your due diligence. And finally, make your decisions. One of the tools we provided you with is a methodological guide in which you will have all of these 6 steps thoroughly explained. So it's really easy for you to just like go through your analysis with the guide. So first off, you need to understand the context in which you're going, in which your project is going to take place. So you have to research multiple sources of information. Again, we provide you with the tool to help you do that. And what you want to do is to provide, and that has to be written and logged in a document in which you provide a brief overview of the country. So you want, as an organization, you want to gain a basic understanding of the situation with regards to the economy, the culture, political life, etc. You need to be able to not only understand it as an organization, but it should be written in a way that your travelers, whenever this activity is going to be authorized, that travelers can read that document and gain knowledge on those aspects. You want to look into warnings and notices and advices by the country. So you really need to look into what is the world saying about this country. Okay, so Global Affairs Canada is a good website to start with, but you might want to look at the Australian, Great Britain, United States, France, other countries that will provide you with a good insight of the security context of the destination. Furthermore, right now with the pandemic, the COVID-19, you have to keep in mind that understanding what the Canadian government is asking from your travelers upon return is very important. So for instance, Alia, we got a contract to work with Action Against Hunger in Bangladesh, and we decided, the two organizations, to not send staff to Bangladesh because not only because of the risk of COVID-19, but also that upon return, travelers would have, my staff would have to be in quarantine for 14 days. And that's not a situation I want to put my employees in. So in that section, you want to address civil context, local authorities, armed forces, crime, terrorist acts, etc. That's all written down in your methodological guide. When you look at the context, you first start with the macro, right? And then you look at the overall country analysis, then you move on to the region, to the area analysis, and then you dig into the modus operandi of your activities or logistics and itinerary. So it's really looking into the context as a funnel, based on a funnel principle. Now, the time is to identify risk. You have a tool that we provided you with. It's called Risk Analysis Grid, and it is an Excel document in which you will find this. And you see we have added some comments. So whenever you see a little green thingy, you can click on it and you're going to have more comments. So this is the grid that you should be filling in as you go when you identify your risk. So your context, the analysis of the context, helped you identify threats. Okay, so you have to look into the context, identify some threats, and then once you multiply it by vulnerability, that's when you get a risk. Okay, if you have a threat but you're not vulnerable facing it, there's no risk. So I know I've been using this example a couple times, the example of the earthquake in Ecuador. If you're not in Ecuador, the threat of an earthquake is not a risk. Okay, so to identify your risk, you consult various sources, you develop scenarios, and you look at categories, the different categories that are important. So we've provided you with a tool also in which you will find the different categories that you should take some time and reflect upon. And at the end of this tool also, you have questions that you may ask yourself as an organization or seek answers to, and ask your partners and other stakeholders or other organizations. So this tool is a great one also to help you identify some threats. Then you have to look at your vulnerability. So vulnerability is the propensity to suffer from the effects of a threat. And the vulnerability is a combination of various factors such as culture, economics, social factors. And when you think about vulnerability, it's also about taking into account the age, the origin, race, religion, sexual orientation. Those are all very important when it comes to facing a threat. So for instance, the threat of being attacked because of my sexual orientation. So for me, sitting in my home just north of Montreal, that threat is not a risk to me because I'm not vulnerable. I'm sitting in my house on my own. So the chances of someone coming into my house and harassing me or aggressing me because of my sexual orientation is zero. Whereas if I'm in a city in South Africa, then it's a whole different story, right? It's very, very different. So you fill in your grid with that information, and whenever you have a threat and a vulnerability, then you have a risk. Another example are the motorcycles in Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. They're very, very prominent, very, very present. And my vulnerability is because I don't understand the codes, the road codes, how people drive, and I'm very inexperienced. So my risk is to be hit by a motorcycle, very present. Now, how much of a risk is it to me? To measure that, I need to understand the probability of the risk to happen or unravel and the impact, the potential impact it may have on me. So when you think about probability, you have to think about the extent that the risk is likely to occur. When you look at a risk of human or wildlife origin, the intent and capacity to execute the risk, that would be how you measure probability. When it's a risk of other origin, then it's the occurrence, the statistics. Okay, so you're going to look into reports and data and things like that. And underneath you have that chart that will help you to say, is it unlikely, possible, very likely, or certain? So that's how you measure probability. And then impact. The impact is the degree of potential negative consequences. It is linked closely to the severity of something happening. So again, below here, you have a chart. And those are examples of how we would measure if an impact is minor, moderate, high, or very high. So what I've written there are examples of how you could classify the levels of impact, but this could be altered and customized to your own organization. So let's go back to our example. Again, I have the risk of being hit by a motorcycle in Vietnam. The probability is likely that one of our travelers will get hit. So I'm likely to get hit. So it's a 3 when you go back to your risk matrix. And your traveler is hit, if your traveler is hit, the physical and financial impacts are actually quite high because they would have to go to the hospital. So high here, 3 times 3 equals 9. So very likely on my scale of probability, and then high on my scale of impact gives me a 9. Okay, you see I'm in the orange zone and not the yellow nor the green. I'm in the orange and not yet the red, not critical. So what does that mean? We'll have to look into it further in session 2. So we're going to look into the risk management strategy and mitigation measures. We're going to look into the analysis of the partner capacity and how to make decisions once you've analyzed all of this and you've attained your residual risk. I look forward to see you in session 2. Take care.